Here's the tail of the running board, the bottom edge of the running board. It's cut off. And obviously, moving that piece over 3/8 of an inch means the holes are going to be at least one diameter off. So Scott just filled those holes now, and we're going to clamp it in place and drill new holes that align with the ones in the running board. Okay, well, the main thing here the last few days has been modifying these running board brackets so they fit the running boards without prying and twisting and pulling. You see the running board here has this little mounting place, and they have like a carriage bolt that goes into a big slot, special bolt that goes into a big slot so that it's kind of captured in there once it's installed. And it hangs down and comes through the running board bracket. Well, if you could see the lineup here between where we cut the bracket off and where the bracket is located now, where it comes out to the running board, it's off 3/8 of an inch sideways. And when you install it the way it was, it did not land underneath the little support of the running board either. It had to go up. It had to go up about 1/4 of an inch here in the back. See, I had to make a little slot right there for the back piece of the running board, because before it went up and touched the support, it was hitting the bottom of the running board thing and the splash apron. That there's a little channel in the side of the splash apron that the running board sits in, and that channel hits the bracket before the running board lands on the bracket. So, you know, there's a lot of problems. Here's a better, maybe you can see this one better. I got some light shining on it. So they both have to move sideways and up and down in order to hit the running board line. It's a pain in the ass. It really is a pain in the ass to work on anything and fix anything. It's very complicated, and there's no place to work. You got to do it with it all together in order to know where everything needs to go. And the other thing was that when we got it together and put the running board on, the fender stuck out over here about 3/8 of an inch. So now we're in the process. You see where this is cut? We're in the process of pie cutting the fender so we can pull it into where it lines up with the edge of the running board. What we found was different was the two fenders. The fender on the driver's side was almost 3/8 of an inch wider at the tail end of it here than the fender on the passenger side, and the passenger fender lines up pretty nice. It's not perfect, but it's pretty nice. We've cut off the very tail of the fender and made it, see, it matches now. So now we got a doctor that pie cut and probably cut it up a little higher towards the front, in other words, so it's not twisting anything when you pull the tail of it here back to where it aligns with the rest of the part that we cut off. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. Today is December 15th, Sunday. While we need the lift for old Hank, the time machine's going to go back there in that corner. Let me show you what we've been up to here on old Hank since we started taking it apart. There's some things I wanted to address in the course of disassembly because it requires taking a bunch of stuff apart, and that's the best time to do it so I can take it apart and get to access. Okay, well, it is I don't know, what's it, 1:30, something like that, and you can see it's pretty hollowed out. It's ready for the time machine, and as it turns out, they just got here. Turning it too much, Scott. There you go. You got it.
Your old man was on the phone filming. Good. It's tight, but you're good. I mean, you could go to the left a little bit if you want.
You got it. Okay, well, there it is. It's back home, and we put it to bed for now, temporary. And here's what changed on it. You see the floor here? This is all new. The shelf there in the back was way smaller, about half that size, the raised area. And now it's got suspension members, you know, cross member and stuff in there. So that's why, and you know, there's fuel lines, you remember all that other stuff that got done. So that's why that had to get done over. The floor and the trunk got done over because a new fuel tank and a fuel pump and all that other stuff that had to go back here for the LS. The quarters, both quarters got changed. The wing, the whatever you call that, sail panel got changed on both sides. Okay. So this is all metal finished. And in fact, what the guy did, in the factory there's a lead joint here, and there's a lead joint up in the front, on the bottom corner of each corner of the window there's a lead joint. Lead joint here, lead joint here, lead joint down at the bottom. They're all gone. The lead joints are all gone. It's all metal now. So there won't be any paint problems with the lead, you know, blisters or whatever in the paint after it's a year old or whatever. Quarters are new. And the quarter was shrunk here because it didn't have the right shape. It was like plump, you might call it. You see how they're kind of flat? The sides are kind of flat. This one was too round. It was stuck out too far. Didn't match the door at all. The doors have all been gapped. So the doors are fit right now. You don't touch those anymore. Like you put the fenders on, you align the fender to the door. You don't move the door. Speaker grill got filled on the dash. There was 2 gauge holes in the dash. Those got filled. The piece on the tunnel, there's a loose piece on the tunnel on these that you bolt in. That got filled. Hang on. A lot of work happened here on the firewall. You see where the steering column comes through? You see that recess there? That's new. The steering column didn't hardly come through the firewall before. So he put a recess there so the steering column would stick out more on this side. Filled all. There was a lot of the holes were filled in this area already. He filled the ones that weren't, like the lower ones weren't done yet. This area where the big heater opening, there's a big heater box that goes here on the stock cars, the stock firewall. That got filled. He made that big notch for the rocker arm cover on the back of on the passenger side of the LS motor. Because Scott's using like Corvette rocker arm covers, which makes them stick up and stick out a lot more than the stock ones. So, like I said, a lot of work happened on the firewall. And both quarters got changed. Like I say, right and left. Both doors got fitted. A lot of work on the trunk. The trunk lid itself got fitted. You can see, I'll close it. You can see the edge has been worked all the way around, and it's been fitted as well, top to bottom. Oh, got a, there's no key or anything. The lid on the trunk, the lid on the trunk has been smooth. That happened a long time ago. The key slot got taken off. The emblem in the back got taken off. So that was done a long time ago. So what he did here is he made this latch setup. He made that piece and put the cable and did this piece. It's got a cable now that goes all the way up to the front. You pull it like it's in the area where the original e-brake used to be, on the left-hand side of underneath the dash, and it worked really nice too. I see he put some. Looks like there's some. I don't know if those are stock factory or if those are factory or he made those. Because I see there's a bumper down there, but I don't think there was those little feet there. I don't remember seeing that before. I gotta look on my car. Done. Closed. See, it worked all around the edge here. And did this panel as well. Like I said, the lead joint's gone there. So, quite a bit of work happened here. He fitted the panels, these, all this stuff. You see how nice it all matches? Didn't come that way. That was all done as well. Here, you see this side. I don't know where it fit and where it didn't, but it sure fits nice now. Because these didn't fit worth a damn before. And that's why Scott sent it with the bumper, so that could happen. So anyway, it's back home. This is going to be up here in the air a little while longer. I got to start now taking the exhaust apart, taking the wood out of the bed, all the stuff from underneath. And then these can switch location. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. Today's Tuesday, December 17th. We're gonna work on this fender a little more. You see how we've got it cut here? I showed you this before. I'm going to extend that cut a bit higher up the tape. The plan is, you see how I can push this over, but it's not easy. It's difficult to move it because I don't think I've cut high enough. So I'm going to cut up another 4 or 5 inches, maybe 6 inches, and see if that relieves it a little more. I'm going to cut higher until it's not difficult to push over, because then I'm not tweaking it, you know what I mean? I'm closing up the gap, but I'm not tweaking the metal, bending it that much. So anyway, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm going to try and do now. Well, that's up high enough. You see, I had to go up another 10, 12 inches maybe. But now when you push on the bottom of the fender, it goes in really easy. It's got to go further than that, but it's closing that up real good. Now I got to take some material off here because it's not going far enough. It's still got to go another quarter of an inch. Well, there's what it looks like after about 3 hours, basically. You see the cut now is up. See where it ends there? Because until I got up that high, what I kept doing was I'd cut 5, 6 inches, and then I'd try pushing the fender over to tighten the gap and fix the side here. And I kept cutting higher and higher until there was almost no strain on it and nothing was moving up higher when I was closing the gap down here, you know, fixing the edge. And so it needed to go almost to the end there. And it's a pain because everything changes as you start. I was fighting this. It looked like it was too short till I noticed that the ramp there was not flush. The piece of the fender and the piece that's left tied to the splash apron weren't aligned. The fender had more of a curve in it, so it was shortening it. That curve was shortening the length. So yeah, right now I've got a 2x4 underneath there pushing it up, and when you make it match, when you make the curve correct, it tightens the gap down here. So I was thinking it was too short because that's what it was looking like. Anyway, I have to wait till the welder gets here now and see if What I've done here is weldable. Okay, anyway, more to follow. Bye. Other side, passenger side, not nearly as bad. I'm not sure what we're going to do on this. I'm thinking on this one, this might be 1/8 of an inch that it's hanging out. Don't know if we're going to try and remove material here on this side like we did on the other fender, or simply pie cut this edge maybe 5 or 6 inches up and tweak it in. You see, this comes out of this returns at an angle already on the bottom. I'm not sure. I got to look at the other fender and see if that pulls in like that too. Let's go see. Yeah, it does. Because you see the bead sticks out here, and over here it gets much narrower. So we might just cut the outside edge back 5 or 6 inches on that one and pull that in. Have to see what Scott has to say about that. He gets some great ideas as far as solutions in fabricating and whatever. Way more simple than I dream up. Okay, so anyway, now with the Clecos going on here, I can raise this. I want to work underneath. I want to start removing exhaust pipes. The bed wood, so I can bring the bed to the painter. At this point, we're just about ready. I can this side I can remove the rear fenders once he gets this all tacked in. There's no need for the bed or the rear fender. The reason the bed's still on there is because it holds the fenders, and the fenders are where the running board attaches, blah, 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 okay? So once this gets tacked up and straight, and we get the other side aligned with the front fender of the other side lined up with the running board, then there's no reason the bed needs to be here. So that's why I want to get the wood out of it. The wood needs to be finished. It's new. So the wood stays here while the bed goes to the painter. And so like I say, once these running boards are done, fitted to the brackets are fitted to them as you wish. We got a tiny bit of things we want to do on the bed, but it can go to the painter. Okay, well, there you go. There's the wood out of the bed. So now you can see what this all looks like from the top down. The exhaust tips came today, so we might tack those on this afternoon. Good thing I didn't cut everything here, because it said the tips were 11 inches. And they are 11 inches. But unlike the ones that I already had, which were just chrome, they were chrome steel. These are stainless. These are swedged at the back. So while they're 11 inches long, depending on how you cut the pipe for the 11-inch tip, you might make them too short because they're only going to go on the pipe. I'm not using clamps, so I'm gonna cut it probably about here, so it goes on there maybe an inch. You know, if I'd have cut them ahead of time, I might have made them too short. Anyway, I haven't cut them. I marked them, but I haven't cut them because I knew they were showing up today. That was Scott's advice about 6 times. You never know, so don't cut them before you get them. And that was good advice. So here we go. Okay, here we go. Time to start making it permanent. a little crowded in here. You got to walk 30 feet to get 5 feet away. As it turns out, there was body filler already on that tail of that back end of the fender, because it would appear to us anyway, there's a from the factory there's a backup piece under the fender to double up the end where it bolts to the running board, and they're spot welded. So I guess it's just from the factory. There's probably filler. This was not from the factory, this was plastic. Maybe from the factory there wasn't any filler because they didn't give a shit on these. But there was 1/16 of an inch of filler on the back end of this fender when we cleaned it off for welding. So if it needs any more filler at this point, it's just kind of going back to where it was already. Alright, well, I'm not going to make you watch all of these. Those Clecos are great devices.
Yeah. Super cool idea. Wasn't this like a World War II thing or something?
It's used a lot for building airplanes. I don't know where it started. The outfit that invented it was in Southern California, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so here's where we ended up with this today. Got that tacked all the way across and started on the end here. The Clecos are still up there holding it flush on the way up. So it's got a good start. And kind of have an idea. Well, you see I got one of the exhaust tips. Whoop, there you go. I got it. What I did is I set it up so it's flush with the back edge of the rolled rear pan. Depending where you stand, it looks like it's long, but it isn't. It's flush with the back end of that rear pan. And we got an idea what we're going to do over here. We're going to start with at least. You notice on the bottom of this fender, the bead itself, it's got a bulge in it. It's not straight. So we're going to start. I think I'm going to take this fender off and work on it on the little horse, the body and fender horse. So I can try and straighten that out first. Cut this corner so that this corner right here so that the tail is loose from the part going in. Because it looks like it might be sticking out a little on the bottom. I'm going to play every angle that I can. And maybe this edge here of the splash apron right now is pulled out towards the fender because there was a gap there when I put it together. Like I said, this is all the splash aprons are reproduction. They never fit the fender very well going up here and across the top. So that's all been worked. And if I remember right, this top corner was pulled out to the fender. I'm going to try and reverse that and pull it back in, maybe up to here, and see if that will allow the fender to, it doesn't need to move much, if that will allow the fender to move over the amount it needs to move over, because it doesn't need very much. So I think I'm going to take the fender off and see if I can straighten this bottom area and work that while the fender's out of the way, pull it in a little bit. I mean, I could always reverse that. So I'm going to try pulling that back a little bit, put the fender back and see if it will push in a little on the bottom here. Hopefully it will. That would really simplify this, because I don't want to go through anywhere near, and this is not, it's minor compared to the other side, so we shouldn't have to go anywhere near the amount of work we did on the other side. So anyway, that's kind of the plan for tomorrow, as well as some errands. I got to pick up some welding rod, you know, do that kind of stuff. Get some these carriage bolts that go on the bottom here. There's one here, sorry, and behind this nut there's another one. And they're with the rolled pan. The rolled pan goes up inside that, the front side of that channel that's there at the bottom of the tailgate. So those bolts were short to begin with. When you add the inside of the rolled pan, the bolts, they might catch 2 threads on the nut. The nuts catch 2 threads on the bolt. So I need to get some longer bolts, carriage bolts, that'll go through there and allow the nut and a washer or a Teflon, what do you call those? Nuts, not a nutsert. I can't remember. What you call the nut that's got the Teflon so it stays when you tighten it. I can't remember the name of them now. So if I get something that's long enough, I can use some of those in there because they're, I mean, you don't want them coming loose. And if they do, it's a pain in the ass to get to them. So anyway, that's it for today. See you later. Okay, here we are once again back at Blue Heinz Garage. We worked on this yesterday. Sorry, I didn't do much filming. I just kind of got carried away going and went for it. But we did make some progress here yesterday. I took this fender off and worked on this bottom edge. Got it pretty straight. You lay it on the floor now, and you lay it on the floor because it's so it's not a straight line. I mean, it's not a flat line in the fact that it goes from this level up to that level. It's really hard to go straight across it. So I laid it on the floor, and it's damn straight. And the very bottom, where it was all bulgy, is very straight. And you notice that now it lines up with the edge of the running board. It didn't take much to get that. We did a tack on the inside of that corner. After it did have a piece of metal, a backup piece going around the inside of it. We cut that loose and pulled that edge in. What I'm doing today is I'm going to put the other exhaust tip on. I got to cut the pipe and put the other tip on. I'm putting the carriage bolts in that hole, and there's one behind the nut here on this side. Carriage bolts that are long enough to reach through and put a nylock nut. That's the term I was trying to think of the other day. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to make some pieces to fill these squares right here that you're looking at. We're gonna fill this in so it's nice and flat and smooth. And that's going to be a bit of a chore. It looks really simple, but that means I got to make all these little 3/4 inch square pieces that fit inside that, and and with enough space so that some weld material ends up in there. So when you grind it flat, you're not grinding all the weld away. Okay, here we go. We're going to stick them. Scott's going to stick them. Got a bad ground again. Okay, well here's what these look like when they're installed, ready to get welded in. And here's what they look like after they're welded in and all dressed. Bed rail is all closed up and nice and neat looking. And I can't show you. Hang on a second. Stay. There's the exhaust tips. Those are welded on now too. And the fender's in the process of getting the final welding done too. So you got all the what are you grinding it right now? Oh yeah, you ground it flat. Yeah. Okay, but you see he's got it tacked all the way up the side too. So again, he'll start doing the permanent weld now, tying all the tacks together. Okay, well, I spent some time out here this morning, worked the bottom of this fender so it's a whole lot better. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Unless Scott wants to play with it some more. It's pretty flat. You can see I went over it with the DA, so there's some low spots. But this fender was never flat. I mean, it had filler on it when we started with it. You see there's still some white there. There's still some filler going higher up the fender. But that's not bad at all. I mean, there's a piece underneath this last inch of the fender. There's a backup piece that's spot welded to the outside of the fender. So some of those marks you're looking at, some of those low spots you're looking at there, I think those 3 or 4 you're looking at across there are spot weld marks that aren't gonna, you can't body and fender those out. This is a spot weld. That's a spot weld. I think that's a spot weld. I think there might be one there too. You're not going to body work those out. You got to fill those. This is the joint that Scott made with the weld, and it's not quite flat, but it's, like I say, you're going to fill that area anyway. Whoops, excuse me. You're going to fill that area anyway to take care of the spot welds. So what's there is it's down. You put a straight edge across that, it's pretty close to flat. Pretty close to flat. Maybe a 1/16 or less of filler is going to make that flat. The side came really nice. I mean, that thing is perfect. It leveled out. I mean, this has a bolt in it going into the splash apron every 5 inches, maybe, going up there. So that didn't go anywhere. When he put and he made sure it was really flush when he welded it. So that came out really nice. This edge, like I say down here, is a little odd because there's, you know, another piece fastened to it down here. It makes it difficult. Before I take any more of this apart, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to give you a look from the top down. This is what you normally, I mean, unless it's up in the air and you're standing under it, you normally don't see what it looks like underneath. This one's way too low for that. But anyway, there's the exhaust coming over the differential with the V-groove clamps. And there's a rolled rear pan that goes under this area. So the first hanger is back here. You see the bolt there? And then it goes forward. You see the drive shaft loop, panhard bar. We modified the frame rear crossmember, the rear crossmember of the frame used to go over the top of the differential. Actually, I'm sorry, it did not. This is a TCI frame, so they come back here at an angle like this, and then they go across the middle, and then they go back at an angle to the pieces on the side. And that's done so that the wood on the bed doesn't need to be cut for the crossmember. Like the originals, the wood, there's a plate in the middle of the bed where the wood is got a great big hole in it to allow for the crossmember to go over the top of the differential. So you remember these had the buggy spring. And what TCI does with that angle piece right here is it means like there's no place for your exhaust to go over the differential. It really screws you up for exhaust. So you see what we did here. We cut that out and we came straight back and went across and straight forward. And that did two things. It opened up an area for the exhaust to go where it is now with some clearance over the top of the rear end. The exhaust is the same height as the frame, so unless the frame hits, the exhaust ain't gonna hit. And it did another thing. The back of the bed on the Model A, from that rear crossmember, from here, the back of the bed is unsupported. That much of the rear of the bed is just hanging out there. This is like, oh, I think it's over 2 feet. That's just hanging out there. The last support is at the end of the frame, which is right over the top of the rear axle on a Model A. So, like I said, the bed on these things, the over half of the bed is unsupported. So, bringing the frame back like we did, we came back to this rear bed cross member, and then put some tabs under the rear frame cross member, so we could support the rear of the bed from that rear bed cross member. You see, there's a bolt there and a bolt there, and underneath there's a tab coming out off that rear cross member, the rear frame cross member. Sorry, I'm getting my hands in the way here. Anyway, that's again what you see from the top. This shaft you see going across here is for the e-brake. You remember these have the big handle sticking up right near the shifter. And that's already been disassembled here, but that comes back and it goes to this arm here with the holes in it and pulls that arm. And on the outside, you can see over there on the outside, on the outside of that arm, on the outside of the cross shaft, there's a shorter arm that attaches a cable that goes to the rear wheel. That's how you energize the e-brake. That's a transmission oil cooler, and the line's coming back here, going to the tranny. The other line, see the other hoses here, and the other lines it goes back over to the tank on the driver's side. You see it hanging down there with the big coupling in it, and then it goes around under the frame. There's a fuel filter on the other side of the frame, and that's where it goes into the tank. This right here is a selector. It picks fuel. It's electric. It picks fuel from either tank. So you can, suck fuel from the right tank or the left tank. And obviously there's the rest of the exhaust going forward. So that's kind of what it looks like from the top. Okay, well, hello everyone. Happy New Year. Today is January 1, 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. Scott was here today. Just left a few minutes ago, and we made a little more progress on getting the bed ready to send off for paint. Scott came today and did some welding. He finished these. Did the two on this end of the bed. The little plugs there in the ends of the bed rails. Modified the rear fenders. I'll show you that. Hang on a second while I get over there. Well, actually, he didn't do this one. You see, this is in nice shape. The other one was all goofy. So he filled this on the bottom of the other fender and made it match this one. Like I said, these pieces here they don't sit flat. You see how it even looks a little crooked by compared to the bottom. It's just not parallel. On the other hand, now this one looks nice and even, and it's much stronger. This section here hanging out, the bolt goes through it right here down to the frame. This all hangs out past the frame. The bolt goes through it here, and when you tighten the bolt, it pulls down. So I did this. I made this piece as a gusset. You see it's got a little step in it here. It's got another step in it here. It's got the hole in the middle. It took me a while to do that. So he just tacked that in. So now this side's done. What I'll do here, like I did on the other one, I'll get it all nice and straight and use the strut as a fixture to get it where I want it, to make it sit where I want it, so that it's straight up and down and square. This is square and the piece is straight up and down. I'll fasten it to the strut and then I'll make a pattern like I did the other side and make another gusset for it. And so the next time he comes, he can weld this other gusset in. So now when he comes back, he's got to weld these two permanent. Right now, that the one on the, let's see, what is this? The driver's side is just tacked. So he's got to weld both of those. He's got to weld, these tabs are for the tank vents. The vent for the fuel tanks come up here along the frame. They come up behind the wheel and they go up here, and the little tank vent sits right here. And it's also an overflow. It's got a check valve in it, so if you turn this thing upside down, it won't run all the fuel out. So anyway, he's got to weld these on. Yeah, and then the only other thing we need to do is I need to make some sort of captive nuts that will go under that bracket. That bracket is a body mount for the cab. The bolts go through the floor of the cab, down through that bracket, and with nuts bolt on. The problem is when you put the gas tanks up there on the side, whoops, I'm going in circles here. When you put the gas tanks on there, you see that bracket? That gold end of that 3-hole bracket right there, and the other one over there. Okay, this one here in the front bolts on these 3 bolts right here. So there's a recess in the tank for that bracket. Well, when you put the body on, you have to put the splash apron on there first. That's this piece. Hangs over the side of the frame. And it goes down. The running boards go in that channel and stick out like face up here. The way this sits, the frame is right in here. Okay? So you got to put this first, which covers the tank, which means the tank's got to be on already, got to be on first. First thing you do is mount the tank on those 3 bolts. And those 3 bolts, it's the same place where the running board brackets attach. Okay, so you put the tank up, and now you just buried that bracket because the splash apron comes over the top of the tank sits in front of that. Again, I'll turn around one more time. That bracket lives right here. So once the tank is there, you cannot access the nuts that go on the bolts coming through that bracket. Okay? Here we are at Hot Rodding 101. Reinvent something and you make all kinds of problems. Okay, so what I'm going to do is make a plate, like a 3/8 inch thick, maybe even a 1/2 inch thick plate that lives underneath that bracket, and it's got 2 threaded holes, 1/2 inch, no, not 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch holes. You see how big they made those holes? So that gives you some adjustment on the cab. If you got to align the cab with the hood, align the cab with the bed, it gives you a small amount of adjustment where the bolts go through those holes. So I can't make anything there that's fixed with no adjustment. The bracket, the cab was adjusted and it all fit fine when it was up there, when it was on there. So I know the bracket doesn't need to move. In fact, I'm going to, I think, weld the bracket to the frame. The bracket's in the right place. I can't fasten anything permanent, nuts like that, because I don't know exactly where they need to go. Like I said, with the cab up there and the tanks in place and the splash aprons in place, you can't locate anything. You can't make any, you can't reach in there. So that needs to be something that can move around. So what I'm going to do is make this plate, and I'll make the plate so it's captive somehow or other while still being able to move around in with a bolt inside those holes. Haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but that's so just getting out here now. It is I don't know, 1:30ish. Gonna try and make the left-hand side, the opposite side, let's just say that, for this gusset right there. So for starters, I got to make sure that little foot thing there is straight, square with the bed, parallel top to bottom. So it looks like, to me, like it's down a little on the right hand side, like the left hand side is up off the strut. So first thing I'm going to do is clamp it to the strut on the left hand side to make sure that it's flat when we weld the gusset in. Okay, well, that ought to work for getting underneath and tracing the opening that I want to create, the opening that I need to follow to create that gusset. There it is, all straightened up, tightened up, and everything else. Now I just got to cut it and transfer it to a piece of metal. Okay, well, there it is. You can see it fits in there pretty nice. So now what I have to do is everywhere, all the edges that meet the brown, I have to take a 1/16 off for weld like this. See, leave a little, where are we looking here? There, like this, just to leave enough for weld material, for material filler. Well, there it is. It's ready to get welded in. Well, here we are welding these pieces in. Scott's welding the pieces in. This one's done.
Yeah, they're all going to get ground.
Yeah, not finished, but it's welded.
They're not pretty ones.
That's the one that had the big gap all around it. And we kind of doctored that a bit, so it left. Wait a minute. This is the one with the big gap. See, Scott being the welder, he got a smarter idea. He moved it over to the left where the big weld was, made that tight, and left only that little piece that had a wide gap, put a piece of aluminum behind it, solved the problem.
Eyeballs.
Go ahead. So we're almost, wow, trying not to look at the art. We're almost done with this. Got a few more little things to do. And then it's off to Moto Europa.